When I meet someone new and I tell them that I'm a writer, I'll get asked, "What do you write about?" And believe it or not, this can be a bit of a difficult question to answer. And I've come up with a new answer recently: contemporary fiction. I used to say realistic fiction in that it's not science fiction or anything that couldn't believably or physically occur, but nobody knew what that meant, even when I tried to explain it. One day recently, I had an Uber driver, and that's the answer I gave him. And I told him that nobody usually understands it, but he totally did. And he said, "Oh, you should just say contemporary fiction." I was like, you know what? That's brilliant. That's my new answer to this question. I write contemporary fiction. But I've always taken that question to also mean, what are your sources of inspiration? After all, there's this old adage, write what you know. And I've found that to be mostly true. I do get people who ask if I intend to write about them, and the answer is sometimes. But really, I have a lot of sources of inspiration. I really enjoy being outside and appreciating the elements, just the natural beauty around me. Being in Boston, you might say, yeah, you live in a city. It's a concrete jungle. What are you talking about? It's a disgusting mess. To that, I would say, we're right on the water in Boston, and it is really beautiful. If you follow me on Instagram, then I'm sure you've noticed that I pretty much in my stories just post about sunrises and sunsets and the moon, and it's just because it's so beautiful over the water. And I really don't think I've ever seen the same view of that 2 times in a row. So I love photographing that and just being around it. I'm always kind of in awe of it. It makes me want to invest in a really good camera because I feel like the ones I take on my phone could never do justice the things that I see. Seasonally, being in New England, you have the leaves changing in the fall, like right now, and then in the spring they bloom. And that natural beauty is just a great backdrop for writing every day, I've always believed. And then the architecture in this city, not this new wave, generic, sterile, technocratic inspired buildings that we see pretty much not just in Boston, but they could really be anywhere. I'm talking about the architecture that was inspired by classic European villages, and it's been around for hundreds of years since Boston came into existence the way that it has in modern times, and those buildings still hold up. This fires up the imagination quite a bit because there's a timeless feel to it, and you can imagine people of all eras that since Boston was established living and being inspired by and surrounded by those same things. I think that's pretty unique, and that's something that I love about being here. And then, of course, the people I'm around, my neighbors, all of their little quirks. As I've talked about before, my family and friends, of course. I work in real estate. I definitely haven't sold enough books to make being a fiction writer a full-time job. But even if I did, I would still do it because this is an incredible source of inspiration. In this line of work, you meet people from all walks of life and in absolutely every kind of situation. And in just about every week, you see something that amazes you and that you haven't seen it before. And what's amazing is that it's actually happening. When they say the truth is stranger than fiction, I feel like this gets proved to me all the time doing what I do. And I just think to myself, I could never make this up. And I think every writer gets inspired by the global events around them and the time period that they live in. It's impossible not to be affected by them. Even if you're not a politically interested or motivated person, it's still the backdrop of everyone's lives, and nobody's totally immune to it. I've noticed that in basically every novel I've ever read, written at any time in human history, you are always at least tangentially aware of the events that are kind of informing that story, even if the story itself has nothing to do with them. And to that end, I would say that pop culture plays some kind of role. Again, even if you think you're above it and you don't like it or wish to participate in certain things, the effect that they have on the world at large, I don't think you can really deny it. So these are some of the themes that you can expect to read about when you read my writing, and more to come.